Hello everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. Today I thought I'd do something very different to what I usually do. Now those of you who have subscribed, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to do so, but if you don't want to, that is totally okay, because I do something a little bit different on this channel to what other YouTubers do, and that is one video per book. I just started out this channel simply because I wanted to share some of the life lessons from every book that I've been reading. But given that I don't work anymore and I have got heaps of time that I devote to golf, to reading, to my French studies, I read a lot of books, and there are times where I simply can't create one video per book for every book that I'm reading. And so today I thought I'm just going to share some of the general books that I have been reading, some of the books that I have actually put down because I couldn't read, and some of the books that I have finished but will not warrant a one video per book. Let's start. Here they are, and I do also have one that is on the Kindle. Now each of these books are very different to each other, and I think their differences also reflecting on why I put them down or why I continued reading them also makes me realize something a little bit about myself and my book preferences. But having said that, that is part of why I am a member of 2 book clubs, because these book clubs will force me to read books that I would normally never pick up. So one of the, I guess, life lessons that I could encourage you is, if you want to read more diverse books that you are normally reading, then please consider joining a book club. And these book clubs can be anywhere. They can be online, they could be in your local area. And I would say, why not even start one like I did at my golf club, where we are slowly tracking through some interesting books that I would never have read, one of which I will share, sorry, 2 of which I will share here. The very first book was Italo Calvino's Mr. Palomar. Now you're probably saying, Helen, this book warrants a video all by itself, and a video that is very in-depth and very meaningful and very, very deep. Indeed it is. As I read this book, I thought to myself, Helen, this book is all that, but you're not going to do it today, simply because you cannot get everything that is in this book in the one reading. So this book warrants 2 or more readings, and that's the feeling that I got from it. I mean, Italo Calvino, you probably know him from works such as If on a Winter's Night, A Traveller, or Invisible Cities, which I loved and adored. And Invisible Cities is actually one of the best books I've read of all times. One of the books that you would take to an island if you were stuck on an island. So Mr. Palomar, I didn't have any expectations except that, knowing that it was Calvino, I needed to devote more time and headspace into it because it was going to be very deep, and so it was. We're introduced to Mr. Palomar, a man, and his observations of life around him. Now it is written in such a way that there's a certain kind of vignette, and each of these vignettes are Mr. Palomar in certain situations. So Mr. Palomar at the beach, Mr. Palomar at the market, Mr. Palomar at the zoo, and you think, okay, he's just observing life. But what Mr. Palomar does is he observes it deeply. He goes into the roots, into the cause, into the whys, into the wherefores. If there's anyone out there who understands this Myers-Briggs type indicator, I know there's no science backed against MBTI. If Mr. Palomar had gone through a Myers-Briggs type indicator test, he would be an INTP, an architect, someone who delves deeply into the whys, the wherefores, the constructs of the universe. What we learn here about Mr. Palomar is how he comes to understand the world through his very deep observations of things around him, where he's trying to make sense of the world. And in the last part of the book, Calvino brings it together about how we should behave in a society, and in actual fact we start to realize that Mr. Palomar is simply like an infant, how we observe as infants, where we have this childlike curiosity of trying to understand the world, and as we go on we get a bit cynical, a bit jaded, until our end of life where we just say, oh, stuff it, who gives a shit anymore. This is more like a reflection on life. In actual fact, I would say it's on par with Steppenwolf, Hermann Hesse. If there was an analogy of a book that I had read recently, it would be that kind. So I don't know why, Steppenwolf and Mr. Palomar come together, but I think it might be an indication of the types of books that I've been reading recently, where literary books are all about kind of delving into the human existence, the whys and wherefores. Why are we in this world? How are we meant to live? Why are we living this way? How do we live a meaningful and purposeful life? My God, that was a pretty much a deep review anyway for Mr. Palomar. So anyway, there you go. I finished this book, but I'm not going to do a full review on it simply because it is simply too deep. It is an excellent read. Calvino's writing is so evocative. I love, love, love his writing, but it is so deep and it just really needs 2 or 3 reads in order for you to get it. But you know what? You don't get it. We don't get it simply because it is about life. And if you've got life already, please let me know, because I'd like to know the answers. I'm going through, I wouldn't say turmoil, but you reach a point in your life in your 50s where everyone just gives you the shits, and you just go, oh, stuff it, I'm just going to do my own thing, I'm not going to please anyone, no expectations. That's the point of life that I'm at, and so hence that's why these books kind of make sense for me. Right, let's move on to the second book. Now this second book is brilliant. I would say go and find it at your library, go and find it at your store, buy it, Kindle it, audiobook it, anything you want, just get it. It was written in 1971 and it is by Fred Uhlmann, and it is called Reunion. I don't know if you have known about this book, or if you've seen a movie that it was even made out of this book, then please let me know. I had no idea about this book. It was a library book. I wanted a quick read, and certainly it was. It was read within a couple of hours at the most, and it hooked me in straight away. Now, first things first, I just want to say the book doesn't start till halfway, because this kind of publisher called Everyman's Library has, at the start of these books, has an excellent rundown about the time and place, and also the books that were part of the author's life at the time. And so we really get to understand the time and place when the author wrote this book, and we get a great appreciation of it. It also talks about the author's life, what they did, who they met, what happened in each of the years of the author's life, and right next to it, the literary context. This is brilliant because you really get to understand what the book is about before you read it. There's an introduction by Ali Smith too, and I love Ali Smith's books. You may know of her, she's written heaps of books. She talks about the author's life and why he wrote this book. It is about a young Jewish man, Hans, who is 16 years old and he's at a school. He comes from parents obviously of a Jewish background. He lives in Stuttgart and it is 1932, so the time and place is just before World War II. There's a lot of tension on the streets with regards to the rising fascism, and also Hitler is coming onto the scene as well. Now he's at school and he befriends another 16-year-old boy by the name of Conrad, and they become really good friends. Now Conrad actually comes from a very distinguished German family. He's a baron. He comes from royalty, German royalty. So you can actually see automatically that the two boys come from very different backgrounds and different religions. But they strike up a very, very good friendship, a wonderful friendship. But their friendship gets tested based on their backgrounds. Now, given that the young Jewish boy is not very religious, nor are his parents religious, his father also fought for Germany in World War I, and so there is a rising tension in the book, and then something happens. I cannot say anything else because I would be giving the plot away and giving the little hook that happens in the end. But this is a wonderful book. I would say, again, one of the best reads I've read in 2024. It will keep you gripped right to the very last sentence, and at the last sentence it becomes so hard-hitting as to what happened and why their friendship broke down that it keeps you thinking long afterwards. So highly recommended book. You must read this book. It was published in 1971 by Fred Uhlmann. Fred didn't write many books. In fact, I think he only wrote 2. He was actually an artist, and he was also a lawyer, and he was one of the lucky ones who escaped Germany because his parents at the time put him on a boat to go and live in America because they saw the rising tension. The book was discovered in 1971 and it was then published, but it somehow went into obscurity after that, and it's only through word of mouth that people have been reading this book. Third book. What I am currently reading right now is Anita Brookner. Now, this book I found at a secondhand bookstore, and I found it in pristine condition, and I bought it for a couple of dollars. As you know, I have reviewed so many Anita Brookner books here on this channel. I love her writing. This one is called Providence. I think it was published in 1991. It is about Kitty Maul, who wants to be one of these women who are totally unreasonable, totally demanding, and very beautiful, which is kind of typical of Anita Brookner's writing. And Kitty is in a relationship with Morris, who is pretty Christian, a very Christian guy, and he's a lecturer. And I think currently, because I'm only around page 68, not even halfway, Morris is a bit of a dick to her. This book, for some reason, is not reading as natural to me, and I'm beginning to think, and I do wonder, if it is because I've been reading Anita Brookner books all in the one hit, and they all have a very similar theme about them, and I'm finding that a lot of the books are all kind of melding into one, so I can't really pick out one in particular for me that I loved, except for Hotel du Lac, which I reviewed here. Everything else is all kind of melding into one. So with Providence, I was so close to leaving it around the page 40 mark, where it felt as if she was lecturing us in some way, and I had to put it down, but I picked it up again, and luckily the story has moved on in the chapters and it's becoming interesting again, simply because I want to see how Kitty deals with Maurice, who is, even though he is her lover, he also has an arm's length from her, and she's getting really irritated. I mean, if it was me, I'd tell the guy to piss off, but not Kitty. Another book that I'm currently reading is Franois Buisson, Si Bel Horizon, which is actually in French. Me in French reading is pretty difficult, and I must admit, as a language learner, you need to read in the language that you are learning. This particular one is part of a French book club that I am part of, as part of the school that I go to learn French, where we do one book every few months. And the books that we're currently doing this year are all about Corsica, simply because the school are organising a trip. Makes it sound as if, you know, we're going to Corsica like Napoleon. No, Napoleon was born there. But guess what? I'm not going. I don't have the money to go there because I'm spending so much money on books. So I have to relive Corsica through French books and through YouTube videos. But that's okay. Maybe one day I will get to go to that beautiful country. This is, oh no, oh yeah, I've got a bookmark. Okay, thank God. So as you can see, I've got a little red pen in the book. So it is written entirely in French. Now you're going to ask, oh my God, Helen, can you read all this? Well, no, I can't. I would say my level of French is around the B2 intermediate. This book, though, by Franois Buisson, she was a prolific author. She's very well known in France. She recently passed away. She used to be when she was in her younger years, she used to be a jockey of all things, which I thought really interesting. But then when she was 20 years old, she moved into writing full-time, and her books are so popular in France. Of course, I didn't know any about anything about her books because I don't read French normally. I usually read French snippets on YouTube or transcripts. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm finding that it is my oral skills that really need work on for me to comprehend what people are saying. But reading it is really interesting because the way I read it, this is my process now for any language learners out there, is I take it bit by bit. I cannot read a book from start to finish if it's in another language. So I take a few pages every single day, and the first read is I just simply read through it. I kind of get the gist of what they're saying, but in the first reading, I know I'm missing a lot of the nuance, I'm missing a lot of the context. Rather than underline words, what I do is I look up the word in the dictionary, just an online dictionary, just to get the gist, and then I read it again to understand it. Then I know I do something that's really not nice, which is I take a photo of the page and I use an app called DeepL Translate, which is an AI translator, to basically get an idea of what has been said. Now, usually once I start reading the first and the second read by myself first, I get the gist. So, okay, this is what's happening. This is the tension between the characters. That there are certain words that I don't understand, but I won't mark the page simply because I need to take the photo using DeepL Translate in order to read it back to myself in English to then understand, right, okay, I got it right, or, you know, this particular word is X, Y, Z. So I use my red pen then to make markings in the book, and this is why it's important for me if I do have a book in hard copy that I actually like to write in it. I also write little notes down the bottom here, and I have a notebook which I also write out what is happening in each of the scenes, simply because given that this is a book club book, there's going to be discussions around the whys and wherefores of each character, their intentions, their motivations, what happened, what we think. If anything, reading French has been really interesting. If you're reading in another language, it makes you realize how differently you read, and also how, for me, I'm missing a lot of the nuance, because French people, what you learn in school is very structured and very formal and the most correct way of writing and learning a language. What you read in a book is also a blend of both the formal and the structural, but also there are elements of the street language and the slang and the idioms, the sayings that they usually say, which I completely have no idea. I take them literally and I go, what do they mean? Like, what's hen's teeth got to do with it? Until you read up on the idiom and you go, right, okay, now I get what they're saying. I think language learning is one of the best things you can do for your life if you can devote some time to it. For me, French has always been a language that I have loved, a culture that I've loved as well. The more I'm reading into the language and the culture, I'm beginning to understand, why did I make it out to be such a fantastic culture? Every single country in this world has a fantastic culture and language. Everything is interesting. If anything now though, if you learn a language, you've got to just make it part of your life. And reading in that language is simply a part of life for me. This is something that I will do. I will listen to French podcasts, I will listen to the French news, I will participate in French conversations, I will read books. I will be doing this for the rest of my life because it is now part of my life. Now, another book that I'm currently reading, and it is Anne Patchett, called Tom Lake. This is her latest book. It was published in 2022. As you can see, I've just started reading it. This is another book club that I am part of with our local library. This was the May book to read. I don't know what to say about this one, simply because I am struggling through it, and I started struggling right from chapter 1, but I'm only on page 30 and I'm finding the writing very difficult in the sense that it's rambling. I feel as if the structure hasn't been bedded down as yet, and I'm trying to grapple with where Anne Patchett is going with this. It is a story of this woman recounting a love that she had for this guy, Tom Lake, in the past, and she's recounting it to her daughters. I'm hoping it improves, because this is something that we will need to discuss as a book club. For me, if I don't like the book, or if I cannot get into it with around the 100 pages mark, then I will put it down. But you know, each to their own. Anne Patchett is an excellent author. She's written a few books. I have read her books in the past, but this one unfortunately isn't doing it for me initially. I will continue reading for some more pages, but if it isn't really gripping me in some way, because I'm feeling the dialogue and the story is just kind of wafting initially, I'm going to put it down. Now, this one, really interesting. Matthew Blake, he's touted as a debut author for Anna O. He's actually not. This Matthew Blake is a pseudonym because it is the first crime thriller book that he has written. He's written a few other thrillers under the name of Matthew Richardson. Now, Anna O was recommended to me, so I added it on the list along with the next book that I'll be talking about. Anna O is a very recent book. In fact, you may have read it, you may know about it. The premise is really interesting, and it is kind of relevant at the moment because in Australia we have a similar situation where this lady murdered her husband while she was sleepwalking, and she didn't know that she did it. And so this is the premise of the book, of a murder that happens by a young Anna O, who then has this kind of illness where she just falls asleep, and she's sleeping for years and years and years. And there's a sleep doctor called Benedict Prince who is trying to wake her up so that he can understand what happened in that murder and try and piece together all the little clues that this author has put into this book. There are a lot of plot twists in this book. The funny side to me is kind of like he's got Anna O as a sleeping beauty and the Benedict Prince as the charming, handsome sleep doctor who will wake her up so that she could go through trial for her murders. The book, though, was really, there's a lot of PR around this book, a lot of PR, and the testimonials on this book are amazing. We've got Lee Child, we've got AJ Finn, David Baldacci, Stig Bell, Jeffrey Deaver. Look, they are raving about this book. I read this book, and initially the first quarter of the book, I didn't mind it. I actually quite liked it. But then the more I read, the more I just started to think, this is not going how I thought it was going. I found the writing very difficult to understand and sometimes repetitive, but I liked the storyline in the sense that this premise of, if someone kills someone in their sleep, are they guilty or are they innocent? I forced my way through this book to read it right to the end. There were so many plot twists, things chopped and changed. Every chapter left you hanging to read further, so you read that. But I did find the writing extremely difficult to read, not as flowing as I would have liked. Because this got rave reviews, and because I am probably one of the very few who wouldn't rave about it as much, I didn't warrant it as a full review. But I would still recommend, read it. You know, the world would be a very boring place if we all loved the same books. So if you like crime, murder, thriller thing, well, this is for you, but for me, no. Those are all the books that I have read or have put down that will not warrant a full review here on this channel. Let me know what you think about them. If you've read any of them, what did you think? If you like this kind of video, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video sharing life lessons from books. Okay then, thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Bye for now.